There will be a time when you exit the workforce. It's going to either be by your choosing, somebody else's choosing, or God's choosing. But there will be a time when you exit. When that happens, many times there'll be a choice to take a rollover from your retirement plan, to move to an IRA, to move to a beneficiary, to give to a charity. There are many, many choices that you get to make. We're going to walk you through why you would want to leave the money in the plan, why you would want to take the money out of the plan, and to understand how a fiduciary can actually fit into your life. We're going to talk about that on Consider This Program. Well, good morning and welcome to Consider This Program. I am your host, Joe Clark.
And I'm Grant Soliven.
You're not just Grant Soliven. You're Grant Soliven AIF. What does AIF mean?
Accredited Investment Fiduciary.
What's that mean?
It's a designation that lets individuals and plan sponsors, more importantly, know that I may know a thing or two about retirement plans.
So I'm a CFP, right? Certified Financial Planner.
Yep.
Right? So the AIF, so part of the CFP, and this is what I've tried to explain to people before, credentials do matter. I would make sure that the people that you're working with are at least being trained by somebody with those kind of credentials. But we get into conversations about retirement plans, specifically 401ks and 403bs. Grant spent 5 or 6 years working specifically with teachers in the 403b marketplace, but also in the 401k world, we manage quite a bit of money for multiple plans where we work with employers and we have the whole plan that we take care of in terms of all of the employees. That is really, really Grant's forte. And one of the common questions that we get that come from people that are leaving the workforce, what we call going into your life after work, the common question we get is, what do we do with the 401k or what do we do with the 403b? So Grant, let's walk through this.
Of course.
Give me some reasons that I should consider about why I would want to leave money in my company plan.
Absolutely. Joe, the biggest reason or the primary reason specifically focusing on a job loss is that depending on the plan document, and a plan document, for those of you who don't know, is essentially the verbiage and document that runs the plan. It tells the plan sponsor, your job or your company, etc., what are the rules inside of that 401k plan. And so as long as the plan document states that you can have, upon separation, distributions before 59.5, that is a big reason to potentially keep money in the plan, especially if you need income and you've been separated from service prior to 59.5.
So the best way to think about this, and in my simple terms as a non-AIF, right? The way I taught Grant this at Purdue is to understand the Department of Labor comes up with this circle. And here are all of the rules. You will hear things where people will say you can borrow money out of a 401k, or you can get money out of a 401k if you're 55, or you can do an in-service non-hardship distribution if you're a particular age. All of those are real. They're in that circle of the Department of Labor. But what Grant just said is in your particular plan document, those rules may not be permitted. For instance, at the 401k, I don't let people borrow money. I don't think it's a put and take account. It's their designed for their retirement. Yes, I could put it in, but I chose not to. Right? So there are different rules. So one of the things that you want to look for is ahead of time in terms of where you're going. Now, if I lose my employment, let's say I'm 45 years old. I miss those days. But let's say I'm 45 years old and I've lost my job, right? What are my choices with my 401k?
So naturally, you can leave it there.
Assuming I have enough money.
Assuming
they can force you to take money out.
They can, and the rule is if you have less than $5,000 in the plan, they can just send you a check. So something to consider. One thing is you can leave the money in the plan. If you're 45 and going through a situation like a job loss, what we tend to see actually is that more individuals will pull their money from the plan.
And do what with it?
Enroll it into either a Roth IRA if they had a Roth option in the plan, or an IRA as well.
So what we look for, and when we do that annual tax planning that we talk about in the critical tax income, and what we looked for in 2020 and COVID is income variability, right? So you lose your job, suddenly your income is lower. Hopefully you're going to go to a higher occupation, or get your income back the next year. This is an ideal time for many people to take the money out of the 401k and do what's called a Roth conversion, where they're saying, okay, IRS, go ahead and tax me on the money, get it in a Roth IRA in terms of where they're going. What's another option that they could do when they have a job loss and they go to another employer?
So they can also roll that money. It's called an in-service trustee-to-trustee rollover from their old employer to their new employer.
And why would somebody do that?
A consolidation. So let's say specifically someone is not looking for tax planning or they just don't know about it. Oftentimes they'll combine the plan under one umbrella so they can keep eyes on it.
So, my wife was adopted, so please don't take this in any. This is an expression that I use that somebody told me I hurt their feelings one time, and I certainly don't I don't mean this. But what I see happen many times are orphaned accounts. And orphaned accounts are when you had a brokerage account and you lost touch with the broker or the broker left, but you left it at that wirehouse. And frankly, you just didn't pay attention to it. We've had people come in with money at Vanguard, Fidelity, Charles Schwab, and TD Ameritrade. And three of the accounts are just sitting there isolated and just lonely, and they're not being cared for or taken. And the custodian, those are the places that I named, are just like, whoo-hoo, right? We got money sitting here, life is good. But that happens in 401ks a lot when I see people do nothing. And there's a little bit of paperwork. We do the heavy lifting for you at the office. We will help you do that consolidation because it's important. But there are times when you should move it to the new plan. Right? If you've got a $20,000 or $25,000 401k at one company and you're going to another place, it may make all the sense in the world to roll it to the new place. Does the new custodian always have to take the money?
No, they do not. And that we often see that. It's not often we see that.
Anymore.
Not anymore, but it still can happen.
Used to happen all the time because if a trustee accepted money that didn't belong in a plan, they actually pierced or violated the whole existing plan because of a bad contribution. It's very hard to do that anymore. So it doesn't, the technology's there to kind of protect that from occurring.
Still can happen though.
It can. So we talked a little bit about why I would take the money from the plan. What is your what would be your checklist, your filter to decide whether to leave it or take it?
That's great, Joe. And when looking at a checklist, the number one is income. Do we need to satisfy income needs in an intermediate period of time before a new job is found? If we do, and you're not 59 and a half, probably should leave some money in the plan to make sure we can satisfy income needs up until that point. The second is, what does tax diversification look like? So if we look at our 5 critical elements when serving a family, it's that annual tax plan. What are we going to do with the money we have and the tax code we have at that moment, and what decisions do we need to make, and can the plan facilitate that? Or is it better off moving money to Roth IRAs and IRAs to make that happen? Case in point, 2020 had this thing called COVID-19, had some market volatility, and it made lots of sense as individuals were looking for new employment or being released from employment for us to move money out of the plan because they didn't need the income at that point. And also do look at doing potential Roth conversions because income was going to be off the table, and we could essentially give the IRS assets, tax it at a lower rate while the market was down. So there's a lot of things that take place in making that decision. It's not something as simple as, Joe, you no longer have a job, let's move the money. A lot of things go into making that decision.
So at the Financial Enhancement Group, we in some cases, we let people watch how the sausage is made. The families we take care of are allowed to come to an allocation meeting. We've never had anybody come to more than 2. There's a lot of different viewpoints, and we walk out with the same viewpoint, but we don't necessarily walk in with the same viewpoint. The planning team, we can't, because what happens is we take individual situations, and we've got the 6 or 7 of us that are on that planning. So you get a CPA, a CFA, a CFP, an AIF, an EA, and we're all in here, plus other people that are together, working on the best solution for a situation. So let's say somebody is in crisis. They're 45 years old, and they need income. Do you take it out of the plan, or do you move the plan to an IRA?
So with that, Joe, your best bet if they absolutely need income and can't get it from another source, my recommendation would be to take it to an IRA and use a rule known as 72.
72T.
72T, thank you. I was thinking, am I forgetting a number?
No,
72T.
substantially equal periodic payments unchanged for the greater of 5 years or 59 and a half. Now, I'm not sure I would go there, but I would take it out of the plan,
Okay.
right? And it depends how much money they need and how much if they think they're going to need it for an extended period of time. Right? Remember the 72T, do not miss a word in the sentence, substantially equal periodic payments unchanged for the greater of 5 years or 59 and a half. So if I'm 45, I have now committed to the next 14 and a half years of my life, right? Before, or almost 20 years of my life, 19 and a half years, before I have the ability to be able to, no, it was right there the first time, but before I have the ability to stop that. So let's say 3 years down the road, I get a job, I'm done. Right? Now, some people would say, well, why would you move it to the IRA in the first place? Because I don't know that I'm not going to get a job this year, right? We don't know that. If I take the money out of the 401k, what's the required withholding?
10%.
20%. Remember, 20% is what they have to withhold to send to the federal government. They assume everybody's in a marginal rate, unless it happened to be year 2020. The COVID year violated that rule and got it out of there.
It did.
It's 20%. So there's a 10% penalty if you're taking money out and you're under 59 and a half, right? But there's a 20% automatic withholding that they have to send to the federal government if you take an actual distribution where you're getting a paycheck. So let's say I tell them to send me $20,000 out of the FEG 401k, right? FEG has to send the $4,000 off to the IRS.
Correct.
All of a sudden I get a job plus the 10% penalty that I'll get hit with later on. The 401k doesn't do that. The IRS does that. Then I have to turn around, right? And if I get a job, I have to borrow or get the $4,000 to be able to put back in the plan. And then the IRS will return my money the following April, but I'm not going to get it then. If I move it to the IRA, on the other hand, there is no 20% withholding. I'm probably not in a 20% marginal bracket if I lost my job.
Correct.
Right, so this really depends. But the one thing on a 401k, never forget, as Grant said earlier, as long as the plan allows for it, you can actually get money out at 55 out of a 401k versus an IRA that's 59 and a half. Be very, very careful with 72T. Grant is absolutely right. People use them, but many times to their own detriment. I would much prefer you call and ask us and let us walk you through that before you went through that situation. You can give us a call at 800-928-4001. If you have lost a job unexpectedly, give us a call, 800-928-4001, or go to yourlifeafterwork.com. Get signed up for your Next Steps meeting. Grant and I look forward to meeting you. More than happy to help. 800-928-4001.